Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us on DFE News. I'm Jeff Kirk. A lot's happening in the news. Let's get right to it. The conflict between Israel and Iran continues to escalate, with both sides striking into the other's territory. The Israeli military says it has destroyed enough Iranian air defenses to claim air superiority all over Iran and claims to have killed more of the country's top military officials, including Mohammad Kazemi, the intelligence chief of Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps. Meanwhile, Iran continues to launch missiles into Israeli population centers, killing 24 and damaging the U.S. Embassy branch in Tel Aviv. President Trump departed early from the G7 summit in Canada to return to Washington because of the conflict and says he is no longer interested in a ceasefire, but is seeking what he calls a real end to the conflict. The U.S. Navy's Nimitz Carrier Strike Group is heading to the region ahead of its pre-scheduled deployment to increase strategic U.S. presence in the region amid the ongoing conflict. The man accused of murdering a Minnesota state representative and her husband has been captured by police and charged with federal stalking and murder charges. Authorities say Vance Luther Belter shot and killed Speaker of the Minnesota House Melissa Hortman and her husband early Saturday morning. Belter reportedly dressed as a police officer and wore a silicone face mask when he attacked the couple at their home, as well as going on to shoot Minnesota State Senator John Hoffman and his wife, although they are expected to survive. Acting U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson said Belter went to the homes of 4 Minnesota state politicians with intent to kill them. Before his capture, police took Belter's wife into custody after a traffic stop and say they found a weapon, ammunition, cash, and passports in her vehicle. Authorities say Belter had No Kings flyers and a hit list in his vehicle, which contained the names of both Republican and Democrat politicians. Thousands of so-called No Kings protests happened throughout the U.S. on Saturday, the same day as a military parade in Washington honoring the U.S. Army's 250th birthday. Protesters say President Trump's use of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, to find and deport foreign criminals shows that he wants to be an authoritarian dictator, a claim they say is further underscored by holding a military parade in the nation's capital. Joining us now from California is progressive radio host James Farr. James, thank you for taking the time to speak with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeff, for having me on.
So you consider yourself to be unapologetically progressive. So to start off, what is your take as progressive on the deportation of illegal immigrants that have been in the news recently?
Wow, that's a very timely question, and I appreciate that question. What we're seeing here in Los Angeles amounts to a police riot, where we are seeing law enforcement, hooded, masked, federal agents terrorizing everyday people. You know, some may be documented, some may be undocumented. Many have been kind of taken off of the streets without any due process. I think what we're witnessing is on the brink of a collapse of what semblance of democracy that we do have in this country. And it is being spearheaded by an authoritarian, invigorated by Christian, white national, white supremacy. That's what I think about it.
So you mentioned the use of hoods and masks among the ICE agents. What would you say to those who say that they wear masks to prevent themselves from being doxxed in an age of social media where anyone's identity can be put online in a matter of seconds?
Well, I don't think it's fair for anyone to be doxxed, right? But let's not be naive about the world that we live in. And to your point, anyone can be outed, if you will, on through social media and the internet, or just making themselves available in a public space. But when we look at our local law enforcement agencies, they show up without masks on for the most part, or without these hoods on, and they are terrifying enough for many in many different communities. I think the idea that federal agents have something to fear when they have the full weight of the Justice Department and one of the most robust, whether we agree with, you know, who's at the head of the governmental agency, law enforcement agency, they have the resources come after, as they said, anyone that if it is in some sort of violation of privacy. But we have to remember, these are public servants. They are paid by, or they're supposed to be servants, but they're paid by taxpayers' dollars, and there is no expectation for them to have anonymity and to run amok and chase down people in their neighborhoods and communities.
So certainly there's been a lot of media attention recently regarding ICE actions, but deportation of illegal immigrants has happened under every administration. Do you feel that the increased media attention currently is warranted?
Well, I think the attention that has resulted of it is an intended output of what the Trump administration wants, right? What we are seeing here on our streets and in our communities in Los Angeles and in Los Angeles County and Orange County and other places across the nation is a full out assault. And it's police are violence workers. I mean, they are denying people due process. They are separating American citizens and detaining them, totally in violation of their Fourth Amendment rights. What we're seeing is, as I was saying earlier, it's fascism. It's an authoritarian state, and it is intent on traumatizing and terrorizing everyday people here in our community. Hardworking people.
So turning to the No Kings protests over the weekend, by your estimation, how many protests were there just within the Los Angeles area alone?
I didn't count. I don't know, but I will say I found a bit of cynicism in your earlier opening monologue with referring to it as a so-called No Kings parade, and then this kind of edification and uplifting of Trump's failed parade on Saturday honoring the U.S. Army. I don't know how many protests there were. There were thousands, some estimates of 20, 30,000 in downtown Los Angeles. As we saw that kind of replicate itself, similar, not quite the same as we saw in 2020 around the social justice and the murder of George Floyd by the murderous cop, Derek Chauvin. Not quite on such a grand scale or large scale, but I think there was a lot more consistency in 2020, but it's pretty close now.
So concerning clashes when they happen between the protesters and law enforcement, in your opinion, are protesters justified when they conduct such actions?
I'm not sure what actions you're speaking about. I do think it is, first of all, our Constitution affords us the right to peacefully assemble, to even peacefully protest, right? I think those who, as you and I have both seen, that may be responding criminally and assaulting officers are doing just that. They are responding in a criminal way, but overwhelmingly, what is happening here, and I think it's important for your audience to understand, what is happening here is a direct result. We didn't have these problems until the federal government decided to, and Donald Trump decided to federalize our National Guard, California National Guard, and deploy trained soldiers, Marines, killers, to turn them on against the people who live and work in this community.
So James, I'm
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. How do you respond to those who say that the protests are being funded by dark money groups who see this as a way to weaken America by dividing the population?
I don't want to compare conspiracy theories, right? I don't know that to be true, but I do know that the tech bros and Elon Musk and the whole lot of them and a whole host of unqualified cabinet appointments, I think that's where the real damage is being done to this country. I don't know who's funding cinder blocks or bottles or things that you could readily pick up, but what we are seeing is a deliberate and intentional fascist approach to govern what I thought was supposed to be the home of the free, land of the free, and the home of the brave.
Lastly, James, what are your thoughts on Tom Homan's recent statement saying the administration plans to triple down on their deportation efforts?
Well, I mean, they're certainly falling short of their quota. And I think it's important to look at, when you are just indiscriminately rounding up people, perhaps he may hit the number that he's looking to hit. But what we do know is that just under 30% of those who have been detained and deported have been the criminals that the president touted that he wanted to rid communities and cities and states of. Who are the other 70%? They're your neighbors. There are people who perhaps are in between immigration status and appointments. They're hardworking Angelenos who contribute to our economy and our society. And, we in California pay a hell of a bill to support the rest of the nation. Those people contribute to that tax base that many in other states and communities, Los Angeles has a population larger than some states. Los Angeles County has a population larger than some 20 other states, right? And so when you talk about what resources and a tax base, we are literally funding the terrorizing of our own community members through our tax dollars, and what our president or your president or the president, the convicted felon, is endeavoring to do to good men and women in our community.
James Farr is the host of The Conversation Live, Altadena Rising, which airs every weekend on KBLA Talk 1580 in Los Angeles. James, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Jeff.
We'll give a conservative perspective on the immigration raids in upcoming newscasts. President Trump announced on Monday there would be expanded ICE raids in the nation's largest cities where a majority of illegal immigrants tend to congregate. FBI Director Kash Patel delivered a report to Congress Monday night which details efforts by China to interfere in the 2020 presidential election. The report, which is from August 2020 but recently declassified, says China mass-produced counterfeit U.S. driver's licenses to flood the system with fake mail-in ballots. The report was not fully investigated at the time, but rather recalled from intelligence sources around the time then FBI Director Christopher Wray testified there were no known plots of foreign meddling in the election. U.S. Customs and Border Patrol officials say they did in fact intercept nearly 20,000 fake U.S. driver's licenses around the same time in 2020. Left-wing social media site Blue Sky is losing favor among users who say the site has become intolerant and hateful. After Elon Musk bought Twitter and renamed it to X in 2022, many left-leaning users ditched the platform fearing a loss of free speech and created a new site which they felt would be a safe space for them. 3 years on, users such as billionaire Mark Cuban, who was initially thrilled to join the site, now complain that Blue Sky has a lack of diversity in thought and has become an intolerant echo chamber for leftist views, while growing ruder and more hateful. The end result, he says, is users are leaving the site to return to X. Blue Sky boasts around 30 million total users, compared to 260 million for X and 3 billion for Facebook. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem was rushed to the hospital in Washington, D.C. Tuesday. Secretary Noem was taken by ambulance to the hospital as a precautionary measure after officials say she suffered an allergy attack. No further confirmation is available right now, but the incident takes place during a time of intense criticism of Noem for her diligence in enforcing immigration policy. Noem's staff says she is alert and recovering. That's it for now. Thanks for watching DFE News, news done right. See you next time.